Someone shared this tweet posted by a Westerner who once lived in China. He said, "If you were to ask me if I have a New Year resolution for social media, I would say that I wish to speak up more." To be very honest, currently I am working in my hometown in California. Every single time when I speak up on social media, I feel worried, specifically over things like if I would lose my job, if I would be cancelled. However, I flee communist China where there is no freedom of speech. Back to America. I do not want to live in the shade of self-censorship 24 hours per day, even in my hometown. I've been posting tweets anonymously because I wanted to protect myself from the CCP, but I would have never imagined my real enemy is the big tech here in America. It is an irony, but also a sad reality. A netizen shared the response from the CEO of Twitter regarding suspending President Trump's Twitter account. He said, "If folks do not agree with our rules and enforcement, they can simply go to another internet service." Seeing the irony in this, a netizen shared this picture showing the evolution of Twitter over the past decade. A netizen replied, "Even if we are not Trump supporters, we should also oppose what the big tech and the social media sites are doing to silence speech, because it is in itself a manifestation of dictatorship, which can only happen in a totalitarian society." I want to reiterate that we are not Trump supporters, but we strongly oppose censorship against individual speech. A netizen shared this Weibo post from a Chinese lawyer named Deng Xueping. He shared a few thoughts regarding Twitter's decision to permanently suspend President Trump's Twitter account. He said, "I will only talk about this from a legal standpoint and share a few questions that I have. This post is not about politics nor about choosing a side. My first question is, why is Twitter not afraid of the presidential power and dare to suspend the account of a current sitting president? Number 2, when a private enterprise that represents public power begin to draw the boundaries of speech and censor the speech of private citizens, shouldn't the standard used to censor an enterprise the same as ones set forth by the law?" A netizen shared that the leader of Iran can freely send tweets. The dictator that rules Venezuela can also freely send tweets. The Chinese Communist Party's propaganda organizations can also freely send tweets. It wasn't because Twitter wanted to avoid lies from being further spread or wanted to decrease the chance that violence is incited that it decided to suspend President Trump's account. In nature, it is because Twitter wants to control our speech, the content that we read, and the way we think, that it decided to suspend President Trump's account. A netizen shared a few pictures of Americans protesting against Twitter. A netizen shared that YouTube has informed us that they will likely be disabling the live chat function on today's Trump speech on our channel, and we would assume others as well. So the rule is you can watch but you can't chat. That this isn't our decision, but we have to abide. A netizen shared this video clip, which is part of a speech that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo recently gave at the Voice of America, in which he shared about how a few Voice of America employees are not willing to have him speak here or even broadcast his speech.
Read that some VOA employees didn't want me to speak here today. I'm sure it was only a handful. They didn't want the voice of American diplomacy to be broadcast on the Voice of America. About that for just a moment. This kind of censorial instinct is dangerous. It's morally wrong. Indeed, it's against your statutory mandate here at VOA. Censorship, wokeness, political correctness, it all points in one direction: authoritarianism cloaked as moral righteousness. Similar to what we're seeing at Twitter and Facebook and Apple and on too many university campuses today. It's not who we are. It's not who we are as Americans. And it's not what Voice of America should be. As Secretary of State, I'm telling you all of this because I want the best for the people here and for this organization, because you are vital to helping America shine light into the darkest places with the power that only America can muster. Governments like those in China, Iran, North Korea, they don't have the respect for the universal dignity of every human being in the way that America does. Indeed, that is what America was founded. Those regimes are anathema to everything that our nation stands for. We know that government exists to serve people. They believe that people exist to serve government.
A netizen shared that the CEO of Parler, in a recent interview with Reuters, mentioned the possibility that the social media app may never ever return. According to an article from Fox News, he described the efforts made by big tech companies to silence his app as sick and evil. He noted, "That's not what the Constitution said. That's not what the Constitution stands for, banning 10 plus million US voters from the internet, barring people from free speech. Speaking about the current situation, he said it's hard to keep track of how many people are telling us that we can no longer do business with them. A netizen replied, I initially thought that no matter who becomes the president, the direction that America will be following and the trajectory that America will be embarking on will not change. But seeing the big tech companies silencing President Trump, I begun to feel my thinking wasn't right and quite literally feel scared. Because once censorship and silencing of free speech begins, the consequences could be daunting. These dominant social media sites are no longer playing in simple private enterprises. They have been playing increasingly important roles in today's world where big tech can be found literally anywhere. Last year, there was a wave of calls for banning guns. It's hard for me to imagine what would happen if we are no longer allowed to speak nor allowed to own a gun. A netizen replied, with President Trump leaving the White House and Biden taking office, the American democratic system will reach its final stage of collapse. President Trump will be remembered as the last president that was elected by the people. In the future, American presidents will be chosen internally by the big tech companies and the so-called political and business elites. A netizen shared that a state lawmaker in Florida recently sent a letter to the governor and the cabinet to stop the state from doing business with Amazon, Twitter, Apple, Google, and Facebook. And here he shared a few more thoughts regarding why he's taking action.
I think we should do our part to pressure these companies to do the right thing and to stop censoring speech. They have the right. That doesn't mean they should do it.
FINE is preparing to introduce legislation to forbid state and local governments from conducting business with the tech giants, including no Facebook, Twitter, or Google advertisements by Florida governments, no using Amazon services by the Florida government, and no purchasing Apple or Android devices by any government agency.
A netizen shared that the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, recently issued civil investigative demands to Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and Apple, asking for their content moderation practices and policies, especially in regards to terminating and blocking Parler. A netizen shared that a judge in Michigan recently ordered Democratic Secretary of State to release all the communication record with domain name Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google. This may be something to pay attention to in the coming future.
Take you in. Child, we will bring you home. You'll be a flower that sees the spring, soon a dove flying high over the storm.